Time now for a look at today's papers with Elitsa Gadeva, who joins me on set. Hi, Elitsa.
Hi,
So you're going to talk us through a big story in Eastern Europe particularly, which is this Ukrainian strike on Russian oil facilities.
Yeah, and I actually want to focus on the fuel crisis that's happening right now in Russia. So Radio Free Europe says that the fuel crisis is spreading and the recent strikes are going to make it even worse. And the article cites Russian media that describe long lines at fuel stations. And the paper also says that Tatneft, which is a Russian oil producer, imposed rationing across its gas stations throughout Russia. Other fuel stations even had to close down. And then I want to move to an opinion piece by the Moscow Times. It says that the fuel shortages are, quote, manageable, but the Kremlin's options are shrinking. And the article estimates that the current fuel crisis is not as bad as the one that Russia saw last year, but the Kremlin needs to act now to prevent a bigger problem. And finally, I want to show you another Russian independent paper, Novaya Gazeta, and the headline reads, "Petrol by ration, water by the hour, food in stock." The paper says that Russia is learning to live like this only now, but for the Donbas region, this has been reality since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And the article says that it's time that Russia learns to prepare as, quote, war becomes part of everyday city life.
Moving on to a very different story, a very popular tree has died in the famous Sherwood Forest in the UK.
Yeah, quite of a sad story. It's called the Major Oak, the ancient tree of the Robin Hood legend, reports the New York Times. And it was between 800 and 1200 years old, and it outlasted the reigns of 6 Henrys and 2 Elizabeths. And the legend is that Robin Hood himself hid in the trunk of the tree. But of course, it's only a legend. It remains a fiction. But that legend, however, is what made it so popular, but also what unfortunately killed it. So the New York Times talks about a combination of over-tourism, climate change, and misguided efforts to save the tree. The good news is that its acorns have been planted all over Britain. So we're going to have its
Lots of lots of minor oaks springing up around the place. And talking of trees, some American papers are fretting over the cost of cannabis to people's psychiatry or brains or whatever.
That's right.
The technical terminology there. You can tell I'm
got
an
it.
expert.
Well, I want to start by this article by The Atlantic that actually talks about a new generation of moms who just love to get high. And they say that weed helps them, quote, survive full-time parenting. And they call themselves garden moms. And they often post their cannabis routines on platforms like TikTok in order to demystify that type of life. And for many who struggle with isolation, for instance, cannabis is the medicine they need to take before their full-time job as a mother. And then I want to finally show you this article by the Washington Post that talks about the newest research on cannabis. And the paper says that as weed is entering the daily lives of a growing number of Americans, we must ask how much cannabis is too much for the brain. And the paper explains that quantity actually is not what we should focus on, but instead the age group that consumes weed. So research shows that adults like you and me, Peter, are way more resilient to cannabis. Our IQs, our IQs apparently don't go down as much, and all the side effects, anxiety and stuff. It's less, but for teenagers, they are way more vulnerable to the side effects. For old people with Alzheimer and other illnesses that the elderly have, cannabis actually could be really beneficial. And I invite you to read the article if you're interested. There's a lot of interesting insights. But the conclusion is that what matters the most is setting our boundaries when it comes to cannabis.
Yeah, I'm not sure I want to run the risk of my IQ going lower than it already is, Elitsa, anyway. So not sure I'll be taking that recommendation. Thank you, though, for the press review.